Welcome back to another edition of the Edge podcast. Publisher Brenden here for BeaversEdge.com, joined by Beavers Edge writer and KGO radio host TJ Mathewson. We're back with another edition of the big podcast. Thanks again for everyone tuning in and listening. Good to be chatting with you guys again. We've got Oregon State's 2023 football schedule. It is here. TJ and I will be diving into it. Early impressions, I really like how the schedule shakes out. I think there's a ton of opportunities for wins with how it shakes out. And I think it might even be a little bit more favorable than a schedule this last year that saw Oregon State come away with 9 regular season wins. So we'll obviously be getting into that. Obviously be talking about the news of A.J. Stewart departing Oregon State for Baylor. We'll also be talking about some potential rumblings we're starting to hear, and we'll make sure to have our first coaching hot board at BeaversEdge.com coming up later this week. TJ went on the tour of Reser Stadium on Tuesday. We'll be getting his thoughts, how the West Side's coming along. It's looking pretty darn great from what I was able to see. And then we'll also check in with the offseason movement tracker, see kind of catch you guys up on what all the movement's been like with the Oregon State football team since we last talked to you. But again, welcome back to the Edge podcast. We got a 2023 schedule to dive right on into. TJ, my man, how are you doing, man? How's life in Corvallis? How's life in KJO?
Good. It's been a little bit too long since we've done a podcast.
I know.
We've been talking for 30 minutes before we hit record. So it's like, we could split it into two podcasts.
We had the holidays, and I know we snuck in the DJU podcast, I think right after the holidays, and then, things are getting busy, getting back into a rhythm. You said yourself, you're quite busy behind the scenes too, and it's been like, it's a good thing. Like there's been, lots of busy so far in January compared to, some previous years, lots of stuff going on with the football team movement. You mentioned you're calling some games as well. It seems like a little busier January than normal. I'm not complaining,
yes.
mind you, not complaining, but just seems a little busier than normal.
A lot more to keep track of. No DJU to worry about last year. We didn't carry high school basketball last year, so that wasn't there. No new side of the stadium to tour, really. It was just a pile of rubble.
Yeah, true.
So, one day thing, it's like, oh, okay, now we got to lay the foundation and stuff like that. And, and Brenden also, still reminiscing about one bar that he went to one time in Seattle on a Friday night in Seattle. He's like, man, I can't wake up any day and not think about it. It's just like, it's stuck in my head.
I mean, a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. When we went up to just a little behind the scenes for those who are trying to catch up, when we went up to Seattle for the Washington game this year, myself, Keenan Punkocher, writer for BeaversEdge.com, and a couple other colleagues that cover the Beavers, we went to one of TJ's recommendations up in Seattle for just a drink place. And it's a fully self-serve alcohol place. First time I'd ever seen that. And TJ now gives me a hard time that I'm obsessed with it. It's not entirely untrue. I just think it's an awesome concept. So, anyone want to look up Tapster? That's it. But
Brendan's taking donations to open a franchise. If anyone wants to get in on the piece of the pie.
Hey, it's true. We're all asking for money these days, right? The university wants more money to retain players. Brenden wants more money to open up a rec. Just kidding. But no, it's definitely been exciting and a good offseason, as you mentioned, and lots of news, right? And we obviously talked about DJU and Grant Stark last time we did our podcast. The Beavers have gotten several more transfer portal additions. We'll be getting into them a little bit later. Curious to get TJ's thoughts on a couple guys, and we'll obviously be talking about the impact of A.J. Stewart leaving. It's a big loss. I think he was one of Oregon State's kind of really hungry kind of ace coaches who was, there's a reason he got hired away by Baylor. I think he was an up and comer in the business, and no different than how Michael Petrie got hired away by the NFL after producing Jamar Jefferson. You produce a player that leads the Pac-12 in rushing and B.J. Baylor, and then the freshman of the year, back-to-back years, some bigger programs are going to take notice, and that's a good thing. So we'll obviously be talking, about that later, and I have no doubt Jonathan Smith has got his short list of people he thinks could be solid for the job, and I expect him to make a solid hire. TJ, outside of one defensive coordinator who shall not be named, Jonathan Smith has a pretty good track record of hiring coaches.
Right, yeah. And news was a little shocking to me, I guess, but after seeing how it transpired, AJ Stewart now gets the associate head coach tag thrown on
Yeah.
his role too. So I mean, you're not going to turn that down. So
No,
it's at that point where you're just like, you get a pay bump too, and it's like, well,
yeah.
at
I
some
mean,
point,
like,
some guys just do what's best.
certainly, and like I could see where some people would maybe say it's a little bit of a not a lateral move, but not like a major jump up. It's not like he's going to Alabama or somewhere in the SEC, for example. But Baylor, has had some more success than Oregon State over the last few seasons as far as BCS games and whatnot. And Dave Aranda's, heck of a coach and, great staff and someone that if I was, you know, young and coaching, and if I can get a pay bump and then be on someone's staff who I think could further elevate my profile, I get it. So, we'll be diving into it and talking about some replacements potentially as well. And who knows? Maybe it's an Oregon State alum. Who knows? Maybe, lots of possibilities I think are in tow for that specific situation. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. But TJ, the schedule is here. 2023 football schedule released today. Came a little later than expected. Usually about a month earlier we would have expected the schedule. So it's about a month behind. So must be kind of working through some things behind the scenes. But let's go ahead and run through it here. The non-conference. Oregon State will open up the season at San Jose State Saturday, September 2nd. They'll come home September 9th for the Reser Stadium new home opener against UC Davis. They'll wrap up the non-conference slate against San Diego State. TJ, let's stop there first. Pretty darn good non-conference slate. You should expect to come out of that 3-0, no?
Yes. Yeah. Favorable non-conference schedule. Absolutely. Still don't know why they're playing on the road week 1, but it's already set on the schedule. So the opening of the West Side is going to have to wait until week 2. But regardless, you're going to be favored probably by 10 points in every game at least.
Yeah.
Should win all 3 games. On the show earlier today, we played the pocket schedule game of picking every game as it sits right now. And both John Warren and myself had it at 3-0 with this non-conference slate.
Beautiful. Yeah. Wait, are you saying Mike Parker didn't, or was he not in the mix?
Well, he's on the road.
Okay, right. Got you. Just had to make sure you weren't.
He also wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just had to see you guys weren't dialing him up and Parker being like, yeah, I see a loss in the first 3 games.
Yeah.
No, never. But no, I completely agree. There's going to be, I'm trying to think, like San Diego State could be the toughest of those 3 just based on who they've been previously. But even they had a bit of a down year this last year, if memory serves. San Jose State is interesting because you're going to have former Oregon quarterback, oh my goodness. Jay Butterfield, thank you. Most likely being their starter under center. You've also got a large contingent of what I like to call Oregon State South in San Jose State. And let me pull it up real quick here. You've got obviously Brent Brennan, who was Oregon State's receivers coach under Mike Riley and under Gary Anderson briefly. You've got, let's see. There are quite a few high number of staffers that, let's see, should have this up first, but here it is. Derek Odom was definitely on Oregon State's defensive staff previously. Kevin McGivern was Oregon State's offensive coordinator, holds the same position there. Josh Oglesby spent time at Oregon State. He's down there. Joe Sayamalu, Isaac Sayamalu's dad, is down there as their defensive line coach. Lyle Moyval, former Oregon State quarterback, is an analyst on defense. So that's about 6 or 7 staffers, TJ, with deep Oregon State connections. Not like, hey, you were here briefly. Like these are guys who coached for multiple years. Lyle Moyval, 3-year or 4-year, obviously, quarterback. So Oregon State's talent is massively different in that game. But do you think anything kind of funky could happen with the fact that it's kind of like such a deep Oregon State like coaching staff led program?
In terms of the game on the football field, probably not. Yeah. I do believe San Jose State is opening their new stadium, I think.
Oh, wow.
In that first game, I think someone's got to fact check me on that. That came up on the show today, and I wasn't like totally certain
I'll check
that was the answer. But my one curious thing is, is that why they scheduled this game That's the only reason I could imagine they go on the road to San Jose State.
Let's see.
Even though I don't know when they scheduled this game, to be honest.
Oh yes, okay. So it's not a brand new stadium. They're renovating. So the renovation is
Right.
supposed to be completed in August of 2023. So it's
So
going
it's
to add
essentially what Reser Stadium is doing.
yes, not a complete teardown. I don't have a picture in front of me to see exactly. But yeah, no, definitely. That reminds me a little bit, TJ, and you weren't here, so I kind of have to help you a little bit. But 2017, Gary Anderson's fateful final season, Beavers opened the year at Colorado State, brand new stadium for them. It was a bloodbath. We know it was a bloodbath for different reasons now, and so on and so forth. But opening a new stadium like that usually brings a lot of energy.
Yeah. Yep, I totally got. I remember watching that game on TV.
Yeah, so. Right. Now the other thing that I'm curious to see real quick, and as so it's definitely going to be interesting to kind of see, how that all shakes out. Like you said, I'm not saying the outcome's going to be any different, but I think it's going to be really cool to kind of see, what used to be, half a dozen or so staffers that have coached with Oregon State at one point or another. So, like you said, I don't see any issue there or potential problem, but one of those things that I've had circled for a while, just because it's definitely interesting. A lot of former Oregon State staffers have found and called San Jose State home, but nevertheless, TJ and I have the Beavers going 3-0 out of the non-conference slate. Then you go to Washington State, TJ, in Pullman. How do you feel about this game?
2012 was the last time they won?
In Pullman?
In Pullman.
Correct. 2013. 2013.
2013. Okay.
Yep.
I chalked this up as a win, mostly because the Beavers' talent floor has risen, while Washington State's has not. So that's what I'm basing it on. But it's not an easy first game at all. So I'm like, for me, it's like a 60-40 at this point. And when I make these predictions, it is based on both teams having relatively good health. Nothing funky has happened, and the game plays out how projections would. So I'm Vegas, essentially.
And as TJ pretty much just alluded to, we're not holding ourselves to this as we get to this next season. We could think differently in August or whatever, depending on how things ultimately shake out. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's the toughest draw. I mean, you look at this last year opening versus USC, right? It was at home. I get that. But opening up at Washington State, typically, we even had someone on our board post, and I agree. You'd rather play Washington State maybe early, especially up in Pullman, than late in the year when there could be snow. I mean, TJ, September might be a real nice time to go up to Pullman. I never made that trip.
Balmy.
Yeah, I've never made that trip myself, so it might be the first time I actually get to get up there and check that out. So I personally, like you said, the talent floor has risen. I think Oregon State will be slightly favored in this game, and I like their chances in this. So after that conference opener, you come home for my favorite thing, TJ. Friday football games in the Pac-12.
Do you actually really like Friday games?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
It's gross. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to do one per year, I can live with it. But the fact that Oregon State was only one of two Pac-12 teams that got two Friday games, I digress. But nevertheless, the Beavers open up the Pac-12 slate at home against the Utah Utes, September 29th. TJ, here is the question that I think is going to determine this game. We think anyway. And per Kyle Whittingham, Cam Rising suffered a pretty serious injury in that bowl game. It's theoretically possible he may not be 100% first couple weeks of the season. Is there any benefit to getting Utah that early?
Well, the last 2 years of Utah football, which have been two of the best of them in the Pac-12, winning the conference, making it to the Rose Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. Early in the season, they weren't quite as good. They stumbled out of the gate each of the last 2 years. So you think about that, but this isn't early enough in the schedule for that to be. And usually right around the week 5 is when they would kick into gear and really get it going. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's still too much to it's too much to think about as we're still so far away from the season. I like that this game is at home, And if we're expecting Oregon State to be as good as they are, this is a game they should win, right?
Yeah.
We said, okay, we were saying, so next year's a Pac-12 championship season. If that's what you're expecting, you win this game.
Yeah, agreed. Yes.
So I couldn't break down the X's and O's because we haven't seen anyone play in camp. But if you're expecting to go on win 11 games, this is a game you're winning.
Certainly. And again, I look at how the schedule breaks out this last year. TJ and I talked over and over again about how most of the road games were difficult, tough road games. You look at how it shakes out this year. We're going to start the week after Utah. I agree with everything you said for Utah. It's a game that if you expect to play for a Pac-12 championship, you need to win. But let's start after that. The road games this year, TJ, I really like how they've shaken out. We've obviously talked about San Jose State, Washington State. After Utah, the Beavers go to California. Not exactly the most intimidating of road environments against a Cal team that was pretty ho-hum this last year at best.
Right. And this is a win. Right.
Yeah.
As we said right now, that is right. You're expected to be better than Cal.
Yeah.
Justin Wilcox, I don't know where he's at. They fired their offensive coordinator after the game up here in the fall.
Because it was brutal. I mean, it was brutal. They were horrible. They were horrible.
They lost their starting quarterback. Jack Plummer left. I forgot where he went.
Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah.
So, I don't know. They're not recruiting all that well. So there's just not much that would give you a here there.
Could they, Justin Wilcox is a good coach. Could they drop a good defensive game plan and maybe make you earn it? Definitely. But again, another game that I like Oregon State into. First time, I didn't realize this until I saw it on Twitter, TJ. Did you know the last time UCLA has gone to Reser, you might actually know because you were talking about it on your show today, but I'm curious. Last time UCLA came to Reser Stadium.
Was I talking about it?
Oh, I said you may have talked about it today. I didn't know.
Nope. Nope.
So do you know the last time UCLA came to Reser Stadium?
No, I do not.
So I said the last time that UCLA came to Reser Stadium, 2015, TJ.
Wow, that was Josh Rosen.
It was, and that was the inaugural. I just want to make sure I get the. I'm not really dying to go back through and look up the exact score because I know it's really quite bad. Yes, 41-0. Yeah, that's what I remember from that game. Yeah, maybe it was a sign of things to come for old Gary Lee Anderson, but I digress. Yeah, so first time since 2015, just obviously UCLA hasn't come up here very much. The return of Chip Kelly to Reser Stadium. First time Chipper's been in Reser Stadium since 2012.
Yeah, 2012. Would have been 2012.
He was gone after the 12 season, right? Halford took over 13? Yeah, so there you go. I
think so.
Yeah, one of the two, so somewhere in there, but I think the last year. So yeah, Chip comes back up to Reser Stadium, obviously. TJ, I'd feel a lot different about this game if they still had DTR under center. The fact that they're going to have all likelihood Dante Moore, who, if any of you saw him play in the All-American Bowl, the dude is a stud. But just Oregon State being at home, UCLA losing a lot of senior kind of laden players from this group that stayed and played so many years. It wasn't just DTR. There were lots of guys who were kind of there and had kind of been there to build it up. I think UCLA's a
Charbonnet too.
Right. I think they're a prime regression candidate. Maybe I'm wrong, but I see this as another winnable game on the schedule.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really excited to watch Dante Moore, but nonetheless,
me too.
This will be more of a growth thing. And Chip's recruiting has been able to bump up a little bit when he physically hasn't had to recruit. Because I know that was always one of the things he didn't really like about college football is traveling the country and sitting in someone's living room and
that wasn't
Chip's
all game.
These things. That wasn't really Chip's game. But now all he has to do is go, hey, collective, him.
Yeah. Get over there, please. Yeah, exactly.
Get over there, please. That's all he has to do. And that's how he got Dante Moore to know. Dante also went there because they're going to be in the Big Ten next year, and he's from Detroit. So,
but you talk about the impact though, and I don't mean to, as far as the ripple effects, TJ. If Bo Nix doesn't return to Oregon, Dante Moore probably. No. Play the what if game with me. If Bo Nix hadn't gone back to Oregon, I don't think Dante Moore flips. Do you?
No, I don't think so either. Because I think he expects to play year one, which he probably would have expected to play year one at Oregon as well.
Right.
I don't know how much it had to do with Kenny Dillingham, because Kenny Dillingham, who's now the head
It's
coach at
true.
ASU,
It's very true.
is the one who recruited Dante Moore. That it
That's
was his name on the recruitment.
yeah,
So
very
I
true.
don't know how much that had to do with it, but yeah, I think he didn't want to sit and wait for a year. And the impression of being able to go back closer to home on the
Yeah.
road was also intriguing as well.
Yeah,
So
no, like that was yeah.
regardless, the you know, UCLA still could be decent. They could win 8 games, but not what we saw last year.
Well, that and not like it really matters, but I didn't really like how UCLA ended their season. I think that's going to
Nope.
sit with them, and maybe not. But I know people who are like bowl games have no impact on the next year, and it's true. Every year is a new team, new leaders, new personalities, all those things. But I think after a 4 year, I think 5 technically with the COVID year in DTR, there's gonna be some growing pains. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Then the
a game
Beavers get a
Oregon
bye
State
week.
should win.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that's 7 games before the bye week. I'm not gonna start throwing out records, but like if things break possible, TJ and I could see a 7-0 start. Is that likely? I don't know. I think it's a little too early still to say.
Right.
But you could see it, right, TJ, based on what we've said?
Expectations are expectations. I had them. We picked today 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, I did have them 7. I did have them 8-0.
Okay, so here we go. So TJ teasing the next one as well. They go on a bye week after UCLA. I think the bye breaks in a good spot this year generally. Kind of goes half and half instead of like an early bye or a super late bye. Then they go for 2 back-to-back road games. And 2 road games that are very intriguing to me. First, they go down to Arizona, who they haven't played in a couple of years, too, as a result of the old flippity-flop of the schedule. Matchup with Jedd Fisch and the Arizona Wildcats. Again, definitely going to be interesting. A game that I think they should win. A game they should be favored to win. However, Jedd Fisch has been recruiting a monster down there in Tucson. And you look back at these recruiting rankings this last year, outside of, I believe, based on rivals, Oregon State. Oregon led the conference. I think Stanford was number 2, and I want to say Arizona was 3 or 4. Definitely near the top. They might have dropped off a little bit, but they, were buoyed by a couple 5 stars. Jedd Fisch had kind of, recruited well. Former Oregon State quarterback target Brenden Dorman went there. They got some up and build. They went 5-7 this last year, TJ, but you saw the moments. They were competitive against some teams. They're kind of a sneaky, I'm not going to say they're going to win. I think Oregon State's, but they're amongst a group of like 3 teams, all ironically in a row, who I think are the sneaky teams. I like them in this game, but these next 3 teams are the sneaky teams to me.
I think it's interesting because so they lost Singer. I know that he went to USC.
Yeah,
which isn't really shocking. Lincoln Riley's like 1,000 yards.
Yeah,
and you don't have to scream. You don't have to scream at Jaden Delore on the sideline. Deal.
Yeah, is that? I mean, Jaden Delore is back too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I believe he had another year or 2 of eligibility, but his play was up and down this last year.
It was. Yeah, I mean, I think we had some higher expectations for him that actually sort of came out. So when you look at, I guess overall, they're I think near 50 in the recruiting rankings, and they were a lot high. They were in the high 20s last year, or the low 20s last year, like 21, 22.
Maybe I was thinking of last year.
Yeah, they had a lot better class last year. They kind of came back towards the norm, I guess, for this year.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah,
right in the high 40s. So I would. They got to make a bowl game this year because this is year number 3 for Jedd Fisch. Usually in year 2, you're like, okay, bowl game at least, and they didn't make a bowl game. So that's what so if they are bowl game, this is upset potential for Oregon State on the road. But
yeah, I see it the same way.
I don't know. Is there not A, are they going to be schematically better, or B, is the blue chip talent they recruited going to be that much better? I don't know. I haven't really seen it from Arizona. They've just been so bad for so long. What an awful hire.
Yeah, I mean, they have not been. I'm trying to think. The last 2017, was the last time I think Arizona was decent and had some expectations. I think that was the last year of Kevin
with
Sumlin's six.
Khalil Tate.
Khalil Tate, yeah. Again, and I think that'll be one of the greatest what ifs ever as far as a quarterback not being utilized properly. But neither here nor there. There was. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was a Heisman Trophy candidate at one point and then just kind of fell off. Kevin Sumlin gets fired. Jed Fish comes in. It's been a slow process.
And he never beat ASU. So
well, there you go. Right? But yeah, no, I like that game. I think it could be sneaky. But I still like Oregon State in that game, which brings us to Saturday, November 4th. A matchup with Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes. No longer will the Beavers be playing oh gosh, who was it? They were already on to Mike Sanford Jr. by the time they fired Carl Durrell by the time they came to Reeser last year. So no more Mike Sanford Jr., no more just about anybody on that Colorado staff. No more, I mean, who knows, might be a completely new Colorado team as Deion goes into the press conference and says, all of you need to go into the portal. But, again, neither here nor there. This is a game of all the games, TJ, that scare me the most. And it's only because I think that unlike anybody that we've seen recently, the possibility for the high highs and the low lows, there's not a bigger range of outcomes, I don't think, in the Pac-12 than what Deion can ultimately do at Colorado. Not necessarily year one. So that's where it's going to benefit Oregon State greatly, is there's only so much you could do in year one. We saw with Lincoln Riley, right? I guess you could still be pretty darn good, but Colorado's not going to turn around like USC did. Not going to happen.
No.
So I'll tell you that you can take that to the bank, folks. Colorado wins 10, 11 games this next year. I'll wear egg on this face and we can do a podcast and talk about it. And I might be a Coach Prime believer at that point.
Can we get you a 21 jersey?
But I just don't see it. Granted, we'll see. I think they will definitely be better than the doormat that they were this last year. But the thing is, that late in the year, Colorado is a team that I would have rather played if you could have chose in the first half of the season, because I was texting, Dylan Calgan Crowley, our recruiting writer, right before we jumped on with TJ. We were talking about the podcast or talking about the schedule as well. And he was saying, it's interesting because by that point in the season, Colorado could be like, okay, this is the first year of Deion. Let's get through it. It's been pretty rough. We've had some pretty rough results. Maybe they've only won a couple games. Or it could be the time of the year when players starting to believe in him. Players starting to run through a brick wall for this guy, right? Those kind of things. So I think when you kind of keep all that in there together, I understand. I still think it's a game Oregon State should and can and will win, but this is the one that I see as a big-time trap game. Am I off base?
I have this as an upset.
Ooh, look at you.
It's going to be November. It's going to be cooler. And I think at this point, they will have gotten into the scheme. They will have adapted and really start playing better. I don't think we can really underestimate the type of talent that Deion is able to get. I mean, he already he brought Travis Hunter with him. He brought Shadir Sanders with him, both blue chip guys. And then we look some of the latest happenings in the recruiting this week. The number 2 player in the country, I believe, a corner who was originally committed to Miami, decommitted, and the next day is on campus with Deion.
Yeah.
The next day, the number 2 player in the whole country, cornerback, is there. And if you look at all these top 50, top 100 recruits, their finalists for schools are Alabama, LSU, Texas, and Colorado.
Right.
I mean, that's the level of talent that's going to be going there. And even with just the first wave of guys that Deion has been able to get in there, I mean, I think he'll be a little more acclimated by November, and they'll be playing much better than they opened the season, where 4 of their first 5 games, it goes TCU, Nebraska, a cupcake, and then after, I think it's Weber State, and then after that, Oregon, USC. To kick off his Pac-12 campaign. So that'll be a tough start, but I think they'll be playing better. One more note. If you look at his Jackson State progression, so the first year they went 4-3. Well, that's the season they played in the spring. I kind of give Deion a pass for that. If I were to equate that to this year, I'd say 7-5 for Deion this year. And then after that, 11-2 and 12-1.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. again, I say look at the competition. I say look at the coaches he's coaching against in that league. I'm curious to see how he's going to be when he has to coach against the Kalen DeBoers, the Jonathan Smiths, the Chip Kellys. I totally, like I said, it's a trap game for me. I'm not going to go ahead and say upset as much as you because I just don't think all those 18-year-olds are going to have enough of an impact in year one. Do I think Colorado could be a problem in a year or two? Absolutely. But I'm a little less inclined to believe it's just going to flip instantly overnight because I hate to say it, y'all, but the first time in like recorded history that a new coach has ever found success right away is like Lincoln Riley, right? Like Nick Saban went 7-6.
Kalen DeBoer did pretty good.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, right. So it's like, but even still, like finding immediate success going like Kalen DeBoer though comes from Fresno State. Like I guess coaching is coaching, but I want to see him make that jump to Power 5 coaching. And when, and he's put together a pretty good staff, so I'll give him that too. Surround himself with solid staff, but that game will be interesting for sure. So that wraps up the second of a back-to-back road slate, as TJ mentioned, on November 4th, and TJ's getting a little political on me, coming in with a November surprise of sorts. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And then the last three games on the slate, we'll go ahead and run through them a little quick since TJ and I have talked about these matchups a little bit. We still have a couple things we want to get to here in the podcast. Back-to-back home games against Stanford and Washington, and then finish on Friday, November 25th. A Black Friday matchup with Oregon. I said earlier, I don't love that game being the day after Thanksgiving. Not my favorite thing. I also think that's going to be a tough game. But Stanford and Washington, TJ, with Troy Taylor getting hired at Stanford after a pretty good run at Sacramento State. Interesting to see if they are able to find any kind of rhythm in year one. Hard to say. I see that as a winnable game for Oregon State. And then that ultimately sets up what I think is the biggest game of the year at home. And outside of Utah, and that's going to be Washington. And can you get back Michael Penix and get a little revenge?
Right. You'd think so. The defense is up to the same par that it is. I mean, Michael Penix will be, in his fifth season of college football? And he's going for a Heisman this year. So,
yes, he is.
So Michaal Penix wants this Heisman moment. He's winning that. He's going to have to win this game. I don't think Oregon State lets them win this game because, they really did it seemed like they outplayed the Huskies. They're more physical. They made a bunch of plays, but they just kind of let themselves down at the end of the game and a couple of situational things that didn't really work out. But I think Oregon State will have that cleaned up by this penultimate game in this season. Stanford can recruit talent, and they still will under Troy Taylor. And I believe the administration is loosening it up a little bit on grad transfers.
Yeah, they are. I heard about that, yeah.
So that'll help them out a little bit, sort of level the playing field. But I still don't know if Stanford's going to be their year one. It's going to be a big personnel change, too. Troy Taylor, he spreads it out a little bit, doesn't he?
He does. Troy Taylor's been around. He was I believe he was the offensive coordinator at Utah for a couple years. He got that position and then obviously went to Sacramento State from Utah. But prior to that, he was the offensive coordinator for Gage Gubrud, Cooper Kupp up there at Eastern Washington when they were making a whole bunch of noise. So he definitely knows offense, and I think that's going to be key for a Stanford team that's really struggled to score the ball recently.
Right.
But last but not least, TJ, I'm curious what your thoughts are. I'm just going to say this. The Oregon game will be tough. That is all.
Oh, it will.
That is all.
I mean, we talked about last year. We talked about last year, the rivalry game. This could be the biggest one ever.
Yeah.
But here we are a year later saying, both these teams could have 10 wins entering this game.
They could.
And the way when John and I were going through it earlier, I'm like, this could be a playoff play-in right here.
Yeah.
Could be. If everything breaks right, both teams are healthy, both teams enter the game 10-1 or 11-0. I mean, that is a playoff elimination game.
Yeah.
So imagine saying those words 3 years ago. Playoff elimination game.
Man, it's crazy. I mean, that's why Beaver fans are excited, TJ. And just like that, there is your 2023 Oregon State football schedule. We're not definitely done breaking it down, as I'm sure TJ and I will be pocket scheduling in the many months between now and obviously the start of the season. Might even do it again in April and spring. But just real quick, because we ran out of a little bit of time in the podcast, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about A.J. Stewart and his replacement once we hear more information. Make sure to stay tuned to BeaversEdge.com as we'll have version 1 of our coaching hot board up. But real quick to close out the pod, TJ, just kind of want to get your brief, quick thoughts on the Reser Stadium tour. Just tell us in a couple minutes here real quick, what you thought, how awesome is it going to be, and how excited can Beaver fans be about that West Side?
So first, I'll cover the media, Brenden. You're really going to love the press box. Just sort of saw the shell of it. It is up there. It is like way up. You can almost see over the top of the east side of the stadium.
Wow.
You can see the mountains in Central Oregon.
Wow. Really? You can see the
really
mountains?
nice. Yeah,
wow.
You can see the mountains from up there. It's really cool. So that'll be a good view. Then we also saw the general admission seating, I think on the 300 level. That was nice to see. It's where the old press box was. Plenty of amenities. There's still going to be, I think, concessions up there. Press box can have multiple elevators and multiple bathrooms.
Nice.
Think about that.
Nice.
Then we saw the suites, the living room suites, the Founders Club. The only thing I have with that is the overhang is way over it, obviously to keep people dry.
Right.
But you can't see the scoreboard from there, but everyone's going to have a TV in front of them, I think, there. So that'll be easy enough. Beaver Street was being fireproofed, so we could not see it. But, I mean, just hearing the concepts from Scott Barnes on what they want for Beaver Street to be, I mean, it is literally it's like T-Mobile Park. Have you ever been to T-Mobile Park?
Yeah.
A big diversity of food options, drink options, all sorts of things. You can stand on the concourse and watch the game from field level, essentially, and watch. I mean, it's a great concept. I don't know why more stadiums don't do it, but Research Stadium's in a really unique place to be able to pull this off. And I think all Beaver fans should be very excited about it.
Yeah, from the video that you obviously we posted to BeaversEdge.com, I heard Scott Barnes mention that about Beaver Street, and something I've been excited to do. I mean, we got to cheat a little bit this year, TJ. Being media, we could walk 360 degrees around the stadium this last year, and it was fun. It was something me as a fan who went for years before, obviously became a media member, was something that, I always thought was like it should be easy to link up with your friends. So I think that's going to be awesome. As TJ alluded to, I heard in the video that they're targeting a summer open date, not going to be rubbed up against the end, like the start of the season at all, which I think is good. So lots of good things there for Oregon State, and excited to see what it's like when it's completed. TJ and I will definitely be all over that. That'll go ahead and wrap up this edition of the podcast. Make sure to stay tuned to BeaversEdge.com. As we mentioned, we're going to have a coaching hot board due up for Oregon State's new running back coach. And TJ, want to thank you for jumping on the podcast, talking the schedule. We'll be back soon, obviously, and yeah, sounds like we're going to need to do another one real soon because we kind of ran out of time to talk about everything we wanted to touch on.
Yep, that sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to the Edge podcast. We'll be back soon with another edition.